Well, Majika, hello everyone, and welcome to the launch of OzChild's Stretch Reconciliation Action Plan. My name is Stephen Fontana. I'm the Vice President of the OzChild Board and Chair of OzChild's Cultural Competence Committee. Coming to you from outside OzChild Yarraville office, where it's my great pleasure to introduce Wurundjeri man Colin Hunter Jr. to deliver a welcome and smoking ceremony as we prepare to launch our Stretch Reconciliation Plan. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome. It is my honour and privilege to be here today. My name is Colin Hunter IV. I would like to start off by acknowledging that this afternoon we are on Wurundjeri country, home of my ancestors and also home to everybody here today. I wish to pay my respects to both elders past, present and emerging, elders from all nations, especially all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members joining us here today. Wurundjeri is a part of the Kulin Nation and of the Wurrung language group. Wurundjeri country extends from the inner city of Melbourne across to the Great Dividing Range, west to the Werribee River, south to the Mordialloc Creek and east to Mount Baw. A big thank you to everybody who has helped make this event possible this afternoon. Wominjeka, welcome, and I hope everybody has a fantastic evening ahead. Now, before I start the smoking ceremony is a reference to the cleansing of the mind, body and soul. I will demonstrate how it is carried out, and then everyone is definitely more than welcome to come up and participate if you wish today. Again, thank you very much and enjoy your afternoon. Thank you. Please feel free to come up if you wish.
I'd like to acknowledge the First Peoples of Australia, the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today. The Wurundjeri, Wurrung and the Burong, peoples of and clans of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I recognise our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues, partners and friends, and our First Nations team members whose knowledge, guidance and leadership were so valuable to the work who are so valuable to the work we do at OzChild. May the children of today lead us to a brighter tomorrow. What an extraordinary performance by Wurundjeri woman Olivia Fox. Earlier this year, she made history as the first person to sing in the language on The Voice. The song moved the judges and the nation to tears. I know many of us here felt the same surge of emotion just now. It was more than a beautiful performance. It was a powerful moment of pride, identity, and truth-telling. To hear the language honoured and celebrated on such a prominent stage reminded us all of the strength and beauty of the world's oldest living culture. It showed that Australia is ready and hungry to listen, to learn, and to embrace. It showed that it embraced the richness of our First Nations culture in the spirit of reconciliation. What a powerful way to begin our celebration today. First, Colin Hunter Jr. and just now, Olivia. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us, those here in the Yarraville office and those that are streaming in or tuning in from our many OzChild's sites across Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland and the ACT. Whether you're gathered here today in an office or watching it online, it's wonderful to have you all with us for this very special stream event. It's terrific to have Chad Lofthouse. G'day, Chad, who's come down, the Director of National Aboriginal Practice and Partnerships here with us at Yarraville today, all the way down from Central Coast of New South Wales. He's telling us he brought the nice sunny weather here with him, but I said it got here before him, Chad, don't exaggerate. It's also a pleasure to welcome Helen Maxwell-Wright, President of OzChild's Board, along with all members of the board who are with us today, along with Dr. Lisa Griffiths, Jared Edwards, Mark Powell and Mevin Gerald Wardina, Alison Del-Stozic and Jonathan Finch from our executive leadership team. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the RAP working group who have worked with great passion and purpose throughout the year to develop our stretched reconciliation action plan in close collaboration with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff and the wider OzChild's community and team. And I'd like to extend a heartfelt welcome to and thanks to Kerry Clark, whose guidance and expertise helped shape this incredible plan. And I think you really need to look at it. Like, I know I've seen it online, but it's the first time I've seen a hard copy. But the artwork throughout the plan is actually excellent. And I think you'll all appreciate what's been done by the artists in terms of bringing this plan to help bring it to life. So it's a great acknowledgement of the work that's been done. Before we hear from our President, Helen, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the beautiful artwork featured, as I said, throughout the RAP. It was created by Luke and Sienna Thierry from Bayadahira. Their piece, Dana Young Yina, Pathway of Life, reflects the partnerships and engagement between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and OzChild's. The artwork beautifully depicts our commitment to our children and young people, our communities, and ongoing journey of reconciliation. The yarning circles represent cultural meetings and places and meaningful relationships. The blue U-shapes represent children and young people at the centre of our programs. The pathways, colours and surrounding elements symbolise country, connection, growth and guidance of ancestors as we work towards safe and empowered outcomes for all. Luke and Sienna's work not only represents the work we do, but highlights the spirit, collaboration and holistic approach at the heart of OzChild's Stretched Reconciliation Action Plan, ensuring our actions and guidance by culture, our actions are guided by culture, community and care. In terms of setting the scene, it's now my pleasure to invite OzChild's President, Helen Maxwell-Wright, to speak. Helen will share her reflections on our Reconciliation Action Plan and introduce a very special video message. Thank you, Helen. I need just Lisa.
Thank you, Steve. And it's just very special to be here with you all today, both here and all around the OzChild's offices. So good afternoon, everyone. I am truly delighted to be here and to thank you for joining us for this most important moment in the OzChild's journey. At OzChild's, reconciliation is not a task, an initiative, or a box to be ticked. It is a responsibility and a commitment that we carry with humility, respect, and a deep sense of purpose. As President of OzChild, I'm incredibly proud to stand alongside our First Nations colleagues, our dedicated teams, our partners, and our communities as we take this next critical step in our reconciliation journey. And importantly, we take this step guided by the wisdom and leadership of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander team members. You're not smiling at me. Thank you. Our Stretch Reconciliation Action Plan is more than a document. It is a promise that we will strive for lasting change, a promise that we will deepen our commitment to cultural safety, and a promise that we will champion self-determination and work to address the systemic injustices that continue to affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. At its core, this Stretch Rap is about listening. It's about learning. It's about taking action, being accountable, and embracing shared leadership. We acknowledge the strength, the wisdom, and the resilience of First Nations peoples, and we commit to being a courageous and respectful partner in the work ahead. Truth-telling sits at the heart of reconciliation. It calls on each of us to listen deeply to the voices and lived experience of First Nations peoples, to honour those truths, and to recognise the ongoing impacts of colonisation. Impacts that continue to shape the lives of children, young people, families, and communities today. Our RAP sets a clear and ambitious direction for OzChild. It asks us to transfer services to Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. It asks us to confront racism wherever it emerges. It asks us to strengthen cultural governance. And it asks each of us to continue building our cultural capability so that every child and family that we support is met with respect, understanding, and cultural safety. We are not simply seeking to improve the way we work. We are transforming the way we work. Through authentic partnerships, through cultural governance, through strong cultural governance, and through steadfast advocacy, we will uphold the rights and amplify the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, families, and communities in every step and every decision that we make. Reconciliation is a continuous journey. It is not linear and it is not easy, but it is necessary. So while today we come together to celebrate our progress, we also acknowledge there is still much to do. On behalf of the OzChild Board, I want to reaffirm our unwavering commitments to walking this path with integrity, with accountability, and with purpose. It is now my pleasure to introduce a special message from someone who has been a national leader and tireless advocate for reconciliation in this country. Please join me in welcoming a video message from Karen Mundine, the CEO of Reconciliation Australia. Thank you.
Jingiwala and hello everyone. Thank you for the warm welcome and my apologies I can't be with you in person or live online, but I am recording this message on Gadigal country where I live and work. So I honour their elders, those of the past and those of the present, whose resilience, resistance and protection for this country, ground zero for colonisation, I am eternally grateful for. I also pay my respects to elders who are present today and to those from all of the lands from which you are all joining. I also acknowledge all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining today, either in person or virtually. Now, today marks a significant milestone in OzChild's ongoing reconciliation journey, and it gives me great pleasure to be part of the launch of your first stretch Reconciliation Action Plan. Now, as a long-term RAP partner, you have seen the impact and change that can come from reconciliation action plans. And to me, OzChild's impact is very clear. The work of your previous RAPs has shown a commitment to advancing reconciliation within the organisation by amplifying First Nations voices and embedding culturally safe practices across staffing and service delivery. We know that children do better when they are connected to and cared for in their culture and by community. With this stretch RAP, your commitment to develop a transition plan to transfer services and, mind you, funding to Aboriginal community-controlled organisations shows your understanding of the importance of First Nations self-determination. You are not only transferring power and funding to community-controlled organisations, but you are also walking alongside us and being guided by community. This stretch RAP will be challenging, but I know that everyone at OzChild is up for a challenge because you know firsthand how rewarding this work can be. So thank you. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to advancing reconciliation and self-determination. And congratulations on your first stretch Reconciliation Action Plan. I wish you all the very best on this next important stage of your reconciliation journey. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're on delay in case I swear. So before I reflect on Karen's message, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and the owners of the many lands that we gather on today. And I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Colin Hunter Jr., the fourth, for the beautiful welcome and that smoking ceremony, which is always just such a cherished part that we can take part in such a thing like that. So it's a ceremony that often grounds us. I don't know about the rest of you online, but I was certainly trying to pour that healing power over my elbow here. But of course, it connects us and reminds us of the cultural and spiritual significance of why we are here. I also want to recognise Liam Glover from our board of directors, and of course, Chad Lofthouse, our Director of Aboriginal Practice and Partnerships, Renee, who's here as well, along with Tanya, and of course, all our incredible Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, wherever you are, we're thinking of you now. And thank you for allowing us to journey with you throughout OzChild. And in the spirit of reconciliation, I do want to, of course, acknowledge that sovereignty was actually never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And I want to thank Karen. What a beautiful personal message and what a wonderful, generous words that she shared with us, and her ongoing leadership for many of us that want to, of course, really push ourselves forward when it comes to reconciliation and for a walk like ours so that we can be stronger, more honest and more accountable, because that's what my message is going to reflect on today, about the accountability that comes with a stretch RAP. So Karen's message, if you'll agree, is a very powerful. Remember that this work is not actually symbolic, but it's actually structural and it's behavioural. It calls upon us all to change the way we see the world and how the actions that we take. And it must always be grounded in a very genuine partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And I've been in the organisation now for nearly 12 years, and we didn't have a RAP when I first started here. And I remember saying to Chad, do you reckon we could get to a stretch RAP? And he said, there's a lot of work and change that needs to occur to be ready for that. So it's Karen's reflections on our journey so far and the commitment that we're making today through this first stretch Reconciliation Action Plan really speaks deeply to the responsibility now that we must carry together. And we know that we're here because of actually the strength and advocacy and the generosity of First Nations communities. They continue to lead the way, and they generously let us walk alongside them, and we mustn't ever forget that. We also know that our job will be to lean in further. And we've really got to continue to embed that cultural safety in everything we do, never take it for granted, because we must ensure that our First Nations voices always guide our decisions. And that's then the real progress to self-determination. Now, a stretch wrap is meant to stretch us. And I know as an organisation, we're always up for a challenge. And it's going to feel uncomfortable, and it should, because it should challenge us all to really reflect on the deeply held cultural biases that we have inside of us, the very privileges that we are born into. And there's a very meaningful process for us to go through together, but I guarantee you it's going to be worth it. I know we're ready for the hard work and those very honest and hard conversations. I know that our First Nations colleagues here in the room and around Australia lean into those with us, you know, in every single way. And we're so blessed that we can do that. We can have these very open dialogues at OzChild, and I encourage you all to continue to do that, no matter what your question might be. And that there's also deep listening that's required for us to bring this plan to life. And we must bring it to life with absolute integrity, because one of the significant milestones for any organisation, and particularly for an organisation like OzChild, we're small, but we're mighty. It actually represents something far more profound when you're taking on the commitments that we've made. So moving into this stretch wrap signals that we're ready to deepen that accountability I mentioned, and to lead with actual greater courage. I might have shared with you all previously that sometimes we don't have the courage often to own up to the things we need to lean into. But when it comes to something like pushing ourselves forward, if we don't show that courage when it comes to reconciliation, and we don't open up to others, then we can't model the behaviour that we want to see and see that change in the world. So it does mean that we are no longer content with this incremental improvement, which must be incredibly frustrating for our First Nations colleagues. But I guess with 65,000 years of history, then it is the patience of a saint. But what we want to do as an organisation is be transformational. And that action aligns with our values and our belief in standing on what I would say is the right side of history. So we've got to embrace this level of responsibility. We've got to affirm that reconciliation is just not part of our work, but it's core to who we are and who we really want to be. So every one of the commitments in the wrap, and it's a beautiful document. And of course, we had Steve share with us the story. It's actually tied to better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. So the reason you all joined OzChild's is to make a difference in that way. That's why you're all here, all of you online and all of you in the room. So this plan helps us to move that commitment to transformation and change just not what we do, but how we think and how we act and how we make decisions. And this is a very bold and ambitious path, and it's guided by embedding that cultural safety across every part of our organisation. And it's not going to just be an add-on training module, though I know we get fabulous training from our Bridging Cultures team, but it's a foundation for all the services, decisions, policies, and the relationships we have, and the relationships you take out into your own communities as well. Because culturally safe practice will lead to safer and stronger families and communities for us all. And when we honour identity and culture and connection, children thrive. So strengthening cultural governance is a real goal for us at OzChild, and to improve, again, those processes and policies and leadership practices that guide how we make decisions, how we allocate resources and uphold our responsibilities. And when I reflect back on the governance when I first joined OzChild, and Helen will nod as well, we're a very white, privileged board of directors. And it is incredible today that we have 3 Aboriginal strong leaders that join us on the board of directors. And that is just, you know, something to be proud of as well. So at the heart of our stretch wrap, of course, is our commitment to supporting the self-determination of our First Nations people. And of course, we've got a QR code here, which is awesome. So you can scan to sort of show your friends the commitment that we've made. And it is one of the most significant, if not probably the most important decision we've ever made in our history. I mean, we've been around for a mere 175 years in 2026, but this commitment really is deeply cherished by all of us, and particularly by the board and myself. And it means stepping back from delivering services to, and I say to intentionally, to Aboriginal children and families, to actively supporting true self-determination. So that means what our communities want and need, not what necessarily we believe is needed. So it means working beyond the transition of services and funding to Aboriginal community controlled organisations, along with Aboriginal community controlled health organisations, but it's honouring the rights of First Nations peoples to shape their own futures. And we take this step now without question that community controlled organisations are always best placed to provide that culturally and community led care. Culturally safe, because reconciliation is simply not a conversation about who holds power, but it requires us to hand back with respect, integrity, and purpose what was rightfully theirs in the first place. So the path isn't simple. We have to be brave, but more importantly, we have to be really humble, and we have to really listen to our First Nations colleagues and our community colleagues. If we're truly committed to justice and self-determination, then this really is the only way forward, and we have to walk in it willingly. So achieving the goals that are set out in our RAP will require us to all show up a bit differently, with openness, and again, with that deep sense of courage and accountability. So I encourage you all, if you haven't had an opportunity to read the Stretch RAP, to commit to embracing all of the actions you see, every aspect of the plan, and really try and understand with your team leaders and your colleagues and your directors and program managers, your senior managers, how the RAP relates to your everyday work, because there's nothing more important than relating it to what you do when you come in the morning. And how you connect and support to other parts of the organization. So reconciliation asks us not what we know, but to seek guidance and actually allow ourselves to be led. So don't be afraid, and I don't want to overwhelm our Aboriginal colleagues, and Renee's sitting in the audience here in Victoria, and Chad as well. I'm thinking, but there's never actually ever been a time where Renee or Chad personally have ever said no to any, and maybe that's because I'm the CEO, but I don't ever see them turning anyone away with any silly questions. So together, I think if we do this, we'll build an organization that really, truly stands on the right side of history. We're seeing a lot of things happen in this world today that are really deeply disturbing. And we often think, how's history going to measure those people in the world that are really horrible? But we have a choice to be on the right side of history with something fundamental. And our Stretch RAP is our document to say that we're going to do this, and it's our plan of action. So as we begin this next chapter, I do want to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone involved in making the plan, of course, from our executive leadership team and the exceptional leadership of Jared Edwards. Our RAP working group, every single one of you is just delightful. And of course, the individual teams that bring it to life, and Kerry Clark, whose expertise and cultural insight and deep understanding of RAPs really brought that level of thoughtfulness and integrity as a process that was inspiring for all those involved. And her guidance ensured that our commitments reflect not only best practice, but a genuine intention to contribute to meaningful change. And of course, finally, I'd want another shout out for our First Nations staff and partners who have guided us, taught us, and I expect you all to hold us to account. So today is just not the celebration of the document, even though we are, for those who are online, I hope you're going to have some afternoon tea as well, but we've got a cracking one in the kitchen waiting for us. But it's our commitment to do much better, and to do better to ensure the work of reconciliation is lived and just not spoken words. So thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to Jared, who is going to talk a little bit more.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks to Colin Hunter IV for the welcome to country today. Also wanted to say thank you to our board members who have joined us today. We've heard from Helen and Steve, and we've also heard Liam and Kathy mentioned. But for those of you that don't get the chance to interact too often with our board, they do an amazing job at guiding, asking the right questions at the right time, and providing us with the space where we are challenged in order to demonstrate that we're able to achieve the expectations around an organisation that is diligent, that is responsible, and that is accountable. And our commitment to reconciliation is certainly very high. So thank you to our board members for coming along today. I mentioned Colin Hunter IV's welcome, 65,000 years at a minimum. What a beautiful day it is here in Yarraville. on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. Feel very privileged to be a welcomed guest here on these lands and the many lands that we get to travel on where OzChild delivers its service. But today, my job is one of not providing leadership, but representing all of those that have contributed hugely to the preparation, the design, the development, and now the publication of our Stretch RAP. And I want to take the time to invite each of us to pause and reflect not just on what reconciliation means, but on what it demands of us as an organisation, us as members of the societies we are in, and us as community members. I'm sure you're all very well aware that at OzChild we have declared a very clear vision of a nation where First Nations peoples are recognised, respected and celebrated. But a vision without actions is only words. And our recently endorsed Stretch RAP has been very purposefully drafted to enable us to turn our words into deeds. And like our previous two Innovate RAPs, this plan is not just a glossy document that can sit on a shelf. It really is the written representation of how we do things, just the way we get on and do things around here. And it represents the aspirations we have to influence advancing reconciliation. As part of our reconciliation, we acknowledge the truth. Colonisation, dispossession, intergenerational trauma, these things have all left very deep and real scars. And these are not distant histories. We're not talking thousands of years ago. And they sadly continue to shape the lives of very many around us. And our commitment is to walk alongside our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, not as saviours, but as partners, as listeners and as learners. Our work is about children and every child being safe, strong and connected to culture. And that's not just a goal, it's a responsibility that we all hold, and I know one that you all take very seriously. It does start with us and how we show up, how we lead and how we hold ourselves to account over the life of this Reconciliation Action Plan. It's not just for a project team, it's just not for one day. It's a journey for all of us, and I'm going to ask you to commit to learning, to seeking out cultural knowledge and challenging your own assumptions, to acting, ensuring that you are embedding respect and inclusion in every decision that you make. Partnering through building trust with First Nations colleagues and communities, and importantly, speaking up, using your voice to advocate for equity and justice, and being a courageous voice for change. We can't undo what has gone before us, but together we can certainly shape a very different future where every child thrives in culture and community. So let us all lead collectively with humility, with integrity and with courage, because the time for action has never been more present, as Lisa suggested, us positioning ourselves on the right side of history. And it's through our Stretch RAP, which will guide us to collectively move towards building cultural capability, strengthening partnerships, and importantly, confronting racism. How we grow and strengthen our organisation through building of cultural credibility, capability, goes far beyond attending a workshop or completing the wonderful training opportunities we get to participate in. It's about ongoing learning, sometimes unlearning and relearning. It's about being open to feedback, understanding complexity, and recognising that cultural capability is not something we ever finish. It is a practice, and every person at OzChild, from our board through to every team member that works directly with children, young people and families, we hold a responsibility to build our cultural capability. Because when we deepen our knowledge and our understanding, we create a safer space. We build trust, we honour identity, and we provide the culturally grounded support that children, families and communities deserve. This is our core business. It's not an additional job or a task we add to what we do. It's our core business. And it's embedded in every relationship we form and every decision we make. A really important part of our Stretch RAP focuses us on strengthening partnerships, genuine, respectful, reciprocal partnerships with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations, community leaders, elders and families. Partnership is not a handshake. It's not a contract. It's not a memorandum of understanding. Partnership is listening. It's shared decision making. It's walking alongside, not ahead, not instead of, and not in a way that centres OzChild to focus on ourselves. This is crucial when we consider the work we're undertaking to realise our commitment to supporting self-determination. For OzChild, strengthening partnership also means letting go where appropriate, including transferring services back to community-controlled organisations where it is their requests and they are able, willing and wanting to. This is an essential component of our commitment to self-determination and our responsibility to support transition with respect, openness and collaboration. At times it will be uncomfortable, and they are probably the times at which I've certainly experienced the most growth. To be open-minded, to be presented with feedback, but to reflect deeply and with humility. It's the only way we are going to build trust on a culture and ensure sustainable change. The final element I mentioned was confronting racism. This is where we really are needed to lean in. Our stretch wrap is about confronting racism. It's not just at the interpersonal level, but within systems, policies, practices, accountability and everyday behaviour. Confronting racism is not an optional part of reconciliation, it is central to it. And to truly deliver our stretch wrap, we must recognise that racism is not just about individual behaviour. It shows up in our systems and policies and assumptions, our decision-making structures. It can be quiet, it can be unspoken, is often unexamined, and that is exactly why we must be deliberate in addressing it. And this is a call for every one of us to reflect on how it is we can influence and how broadly we can influence that sphere. The opportunity to notice what we may have overlooked in the past, to challenge harmful narratives and to ensure our own systems do not perpetrate bias or inequity. As is the case with reconciliation, ending racism is not the responsibility of our First Nations people. It is the responsibility of all of us who hold privilege, power, or decision-making influence. I'd now like to introduce a deeply personal message from Chad Lofthouse, who's recorded something for us to contemplate and consider.
Yama everyone, and Governinda for joining us today for this exciting next step in our journey to reconciliation at OzChild. You'll note I haven't had a key role today, and that is intentional, as we have evolved as an organisation and have clear understandings and position on what reconciliation truly means and who should be driving this work. You may have heard me say this quote before and echoed by Jared at induction, and that is, Aboriginal people do not need to reconcile with themselves. And while it is important that we are at the table in true partnership for this work, we should not be leading it. Moving from First Nations leadership at OzChild's driving this work to where we are today is something I'm proud of, and hope you can think about what role you can play to help us progress reconciliation. And whilst there are many deliverables in our wrap, my call to duty to you all is on this deliverable: promote positive race relations through anti-racism strategies. In Australia, since the referendum, we have seen a significant increase in racism towards my people. The Australian Reconciliation Barometer reported a significant jump in racism experienced by First Nations people from 39% in 2014 to 54% in 2024. Younger First Nations people reported experiencing higher levels of racism than any other age group. My view on this is all those young years sitting in those lounge rooms and around the dinner tables, hearing the parents talking negatively about First Nations people throughout the referendum. Their brains are sponges, yeah? Australia's only national survey tracking progress on reconciliation between First Nations and non-First Nations Australians has recorded a near 40% rise in racism during the past decade. A recent study available in the Journal of Australian Indigenous Issues revealed that 3 in 4 people unconsciously hold a negative prejudice against First Nations peoples. A study of young people in the ACT completed by the ACT Human Rights Commission found 11 out of 12 young people who identified as First Nation said they experienced racism. Unfortunately, this aligns with me and my family's personal experiences and the voices of many that I heard from the impact of the 2023 Voice referendum. The misinformation, the outright political lies and cultural wars had a significant impact on people's attitudes and beliefs. For me personally, I had to leave four-wheel drive groups and camping Facebook groups due to the overwhelming negative and outright racist views shared on these platforms. I have two beautiful daughters who could get away with any other mixed heritage. However, they are proud of their culture. And just for being proud of who they are as human beings, also experienced racism around this time. We were walking one of the Yes campaign marches at the entrance on the Central Coast. And when crossing the bridge, a carload of 20-something-year-olds slowed down right within a metre of us and yelled abuse. My youngest was 9 at the time, and my eldest was 14. Just out on the water was a boatload of blokes fishing that felt the need to also start yelling abuse at us all. Then as we got to the end of the march, a lady on a mobility scooter was powering through the crowd, also yelling racial abuse, and even knocked over one of the Aboriginal elders. My beautiful, innocent daughters were no longer safe to be who they are in this country, free from racism and abuse. And it was this day that my hopes and dreams for them to grow up in a better Australia, a less racist country than what I did, faded away. The kicker is, this is not a once-off event. We now live this trauma every year. We have the good old Australia Day argument that refuels the fire. Know that just about every First Nation person I know wants to have this day with you all, just not on that date. Why is it so hard to conceive this, and why do so many Australians reject the basic request for unity? Then we have the political cultural wars, welcome to countries, which are such a beautiful offering of connectedness. And now even NAIDOC Week has also been used as a platform for the naysayers to share their loud and proud views against First Nations people, just because we simply are celebrating our beautiful culture. This is one of the ones that baffles me the most. When Aussies go to other countries, we learn the basics of the language, yeah? How to say hello and thank you. Yet for many Australians, this causes so much anger having to hear about or learn about our culture and language. Why? Why are we all not so proud of over 65,000 years of continuation of a culture, of a people who cared for this land for generations and is now a land we all get to enjoy and call home? Why is it so hard for one to embrace this like they do when they travel overseas? When thinking about what I've just said, please remove the intergenerational trauma and struggles in our communities, as you all know, is a separate, complex conversation. But in doing so, also think about the Australian Maltreatment Study, which is the first national study of the prevalence of child maltreatment and its impacts in Australia. The researchers served a random sample of 8,500 adolescents and adults aged 16 years and over to determine how many Australians have self-reported experience of child abuse and neglect. The study provides a powerful reminder that child abuse and neglect are not issues confined to First Nations communities. They are a national issue affecting children across all backgrounds. Nearly 2 in 3 Australians reported experiencing at least one form of maltreatment. So if you've got 3 kids, it is likely that one of those 3 children will be exposed or experience one of those maltreatments. 1 in 3. It proves that that harm to children is a widespread social problem rooted in broader systems, not culture. Yet the ongoing overrepresentation of First Nations children care reflects how racism and structural inequity deepen vulnerability and shape how systems respond. Recognising the distinction matters. Child maltreatment is everyone's problem, but racism ensures that its impacts are not felt equally. Ending both requires anti-racist whole of community response focused on prevention, equity, and healing. So let's focus on some positives as we have hope. 66% of young people and 56% of multicultural Australians reported they want to do something to help reconciliation, compared to 42% of the general population. The survey showed that referendum also affected the way young people view Australia, with 61% of 18 to 24-year-olds saying they believe it's a racist country compared to 41% of the general community. CEO of Reconciliation Australia, Karen Mundine, believes the difference is there's a growing number of young people who are better educated and better aware. And you have all heard me say, if you went to school in Australia, you learn about how amazing Captain Cook was in the pyramids over our true history. So if I haven't lost you all, my call out to you is to think about what role you can play, small or big, at work or in your personal life, with progressing reconciliation in this country. How can you be a true ally? Maybe searching what it means to be an anti-racist, which means not being a silent bystander. And I'm not asking you to go out and get in arguments with family and friends, but how can you be creative in using education as your tool by guiding and leading people to factual information? This is why you're at OzChild's, yeah, because we're an evidence-based decision-making organisation. We source the evidence and we use this to make evidence-informed decisions. In closing off, I truly thank you all, Gabinda, for being on this journey with my people. We need you. We can't do this alone as we're only 3.7% of the population. Yet think about the data I shared before about attitudes and even our child protection numbers. We need you now more than ever. In this together. Yalu.
As Chad's shared with us in his very powerful and personal message, the truth is confronting. But the truth is a platform for those of us who are empowered and engaged to stand tall, to walk as true allies with those that need, look for, aren't asking, but they deserve our support. And it's going to require courage. Courage to challenge racism when we see it. Courage to ask questions when we are uncertain. Courage to make decisions that put children, families, culture and community at the centre, even when it's not the easiest path. We must be willing to listen deeply to the stories, the experiences and the truths of First Nations people, even when what we hear is uncomfortable. And while reconciliation is dependent upon our collective effort to stamp out racism, I want to also call out that the impact of racism extends beyond our First Nations peoples, and ask you all to join me in being an anti-racist, as Chad explained. Being prepared to actively name it, actively challenge it, and ensure our structures do not perpetrate harm. This really is an exciting, positive, hope-filled opportunity for OzChild's and our reconciliation journey. But it comes from a point of hard facts and evidence, and we can't lose sight of that. I also want to acknowledge that with some honesty, this is a bloody big plan. It's an ambitious plan, but as Lisa pointed out, it's a stretch wrap and it's called a stretch for a reason. The plan asks a lot of us. It has complexity, challenge, and actions aplenty. It asks us to rethink long-held systems, behaviours and assumptions. It asks us to make decisions that reflect courage over convenience. It asks us to use decisions and embody reconciliation, not just words, but in our daily practice to take action. This work will stretch us, it will test us, and it will demand that we embrace every commitment with purpose and integrity. But this is also where the opportunity lies, because when we lean into this work wholeheartedly, collectively and consistently, we create the conditions for real and lasting change. We create an organisation where First Nations children and families experience true safety, respect and empowerment. And we create a workplace where every team member understands their role collectively and safely can perform the work that you all love to do. And through this, we will become an organisation that stands not just for good intentions, but for courageous action. So as we launch our stretch wrap today, I just wanted to finish with two things. The first was to acknowledge the efforts of more than 12 months of tireless work, and a lot of people have been involved to get us to this point. I also wanted to recognise Kerry Clark, Beck Swinton, Chad Lofthouse, Kyron Brown, Ren Smythe, Emily Christensen, Rochelle Bright and Mel Paldano, who have all been true workhorses over the last 12 months. Our RAP working group members and our amazing business support teams with the logistics for today's local activities. The second thing that I wanted to ask of you was to invite you to participate in the work that we do. Ask yourself, are you willing to learn? What are you willing to challenge? And how will you show up for reconciliation in your day-to-day decisions and relationships? Because reconciliation isn't something that only a handful of us carry. It's something we all have a responsibility to lean into collectively. So before I hand back to Steve, I wanted to encourage everyone to stay and take part in making a reconciliation pledge. When the formalities are over, it'll only take a small amount of time, but an important contribution. There'll be a chance for you to pause, to reflect and put your commitment into words. The team in each location has set up afternoon tea, and alongside afternoon tea you'll find a poster, some stickers and some pens. Grab one of those pens, pick up one of those stickers and take a moment to think about those questions again. What am I willing to learn? What am I willing to challenge? And how will I contribute to reconciliation in my work and in how I engage with others? Your pledge might be a commitment to deepen your cultural learning, to build your understanding of anti-racism, to reflect on your own biases, to support First Nations businesses, or to connect more with local community events and voices. There's no right or wrong, just an honest reflection and a personal promise. Everything you need is already here and ready. I really do encourage you to take part. It is only a very small, but a very meaningful action. Thanks for joining us today. And Steve, I'll hand back.
Thank you. And thanks, Helen, Lisa, Jared, for sharing your insights and for reminding us why this journey matters so much. And Chad, oh, Chad, you were sitting there before. Oh, right. Okay. Thank you for sharing your own experiences, mate. Your very raw and emotional message moved me, and thank you for sharing so generously with all of us. As we reflect on everything that's shared today, clear that reconciliation is not a single event or statement. It's a continuous commitment to listening, learning, and acting with respect for First Nations peoples, culture, and knowledge. Reconciliation calls on us all to play our part every day in our work, in our communities, and in our personal lives. Each of us has the power to make change through our words, our actions, and pledges we choose to make. Whether you're joining online or here on site in the at this location, I encourage you to take part in the reconciliation pledge activity happening this afternoon at afternoon tea. Every pledge, big or small, contributes to the collective impact we can create together. Let us leave today inspired, committed, and determined. And if you want to get your hands on a copy of the RAP, it is available to download from the OzChild's website, and I believe some hard copies are floating around at your local office site. Fortunately, I've got one in my hand here today. From all of us at OzChild's, thank you for being part of this important launch. Let's make reconciliation a living, breathing part of everything we do. Thank you very much, and let's carry this spirit forward. And as Jared said, it is a very ambitious stretch. It is a stretch track. There's a lot of work in it, and as an OzChild's board, we'll be making sure that we've got appropriate governance in place to make sure that we are achieving the actions outlined in the plan. So thanks, everyone, and let's carry the spirit of this plan forward. So have a good day.